must test his might. Inner peace he strives to find. Strength from faith steadies his mind. While life joins his only kin, birds and deer bring songs within. Stars above his guiding light. Night's embrace dispels the night.
Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. In the quiet village by the river, among the Brahmins who knew the sacred texts and the rituals of the gods, there lived a young man named Siddhartha. He was the son of a respected Brahmin, handsome and gifted, quick of mind and graceful in form. From early childhood, he learned the ways of his people, the proper offerings, the correct pronunciations of the holy verses, the meditations that were meant to quiet the self and open the spirit toward the eternal. His father watched him with pride, and the other Brahmins spoke of him as one who would surely rise high among them. Young women of the village glanced at him with interest, and his friend Govinda, loyal and admiring, walked always at his side. Yet even as a boy, Siddhartha felt a restlessness that the teachings could not still. He performed the rites with care, but inside him a quiet question grew. The gods and the sacrifices, the pure knowledge of the Brahmins, the cycles of birth and rebirth, none of these seemed to bring the peace he sensed must exist somewhere beyond words. He began to suspect that the path of the householder and the priest would never lead him to the ultimate truth. One evening he spoke to his father and asked permission to leave home and join the wandering ascetics known as the Samamas. His father, though grieved, saw the firmness in his son's eyes and gave his reluctant consent. The next morning Siddhartha and Govinda departed together. They found the Samamas living in the forest, thin and dust-covered, practicing extreme fasting, holding their breath until the body nearly failed, and training the mind to ignore pain and desire. For years, Siddhartha submitted himself to these disciplines. He learned to empty himself of hunger, of thirst, of the body's demands. He learned the arts of meditation that dissolved the sense of self. Yet after long practice, he discovered that these methods only suppressed the self for a time. They did not destroy it. When the meditation ended, the self returned, still hungry, still seeking. He told Govinda that the path of the Samamas was like a long circle that always led back to the same place. They needed something more. Word reached them of a man called Gautama, the Buddha, who had attained enlightenment and was teaching a new doctrine. Siddhartha and Govinda left the Samamas and traveled to the town where the Buddha was staying. They listened to his discourse on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The Buddha's face was calm, his words clear, and many listeners were moved to become his disciples. Govinda, deeply affected, decided at once to join the order of monks who followed the Buddha. Siddhartha, however, remained apart. He approached the Buddha privately and spoke with respect. He said that the Buddha's teaching was the most perfect he had ever heard, yet he could not become a follower. Enlightenment, he believed, could not be handed from one person to another through doctrine alone. Each man must find his own way. The Buddha listened without anger and wished him well. Siddhartha walked away alone, while Govinda remained behind with the monks. Now free of every teacher and every community, Siddhartha wandered into the world of ordinary people. He crossed a wide river with the help of an old ferryman named Vasudeva, who spoke little but whose quiet presence stayed in Siddhartha's memory. On the far side, he entered a city and, for the first time, allowed himself to look closely at the lives of merchants, craftsmen, and lovers. He met a beautiful courtesan named Kamala. She was skilled in the arts of pleasure and demanded that a man who wished to be near her must first become rich and refined. Siddhartha, still carrying the discipline of the Samamas, set himself to learn the ways of the world. He apprenticed himself to a wealthy merchant named Kamaswami and quickly mastered the arts of trade, negotiation, and accumulation. He grew rich. He learned to dress finely, to speak the language of business, and to enjoy the pleasures that money could buy. Kamala became his teacher in love. With her, he discovered the delights of the body and the subtle games of desire. Years passed. Siddhartha lived as a man of the world, eating well, gambling, collecting possessions, and moving among the wealthy. Yet the longer he remained in this life, the more a quiet emptiness grew inside him. The pleasures that had once seemed so bright began to taste of ash. He saw that the cycle of gaining and losing, of wanting and being sated, never ended. One night, after a long session of gambling and wine, he looked at his own face in a mirror and saw the face of a man who had grown soft and weary. Disgust rose in him. He left the house of Kamaswami, left his fine clothes and his wealth, and walked away without a word. He wandered until he reached the same river he had crossed years before. Standing on its bank, he felt that his life had become worthless. He leaned toward the water, thinking of ending it, when a word rose within him, the sacred syllable Om. The sound steadied him. He sank down under a tree and slept. When he woke, the ferryman Vasudeva was nearby. Siddhartha asked to stay and learn the work of the ferry. Vasudeva accepted him without question. From that day, Siddhartha lived simply, poling the boat back and forth across the river, listening to the water and speaking little. Under Vasudeva's quiet guidance, he began to hear the river differently. The river spoke of many things at once, of the past and the future, of sorrow and joy, of every voice that had ever lived. Siddhartha learned that time itself was an illusion, that all moments existed together in the eternal present, and that every form, stone, plant, animal, human, was part of a single flowing whole. He practiced listening until the many voices of the river became one voice, the voice of Om. Years later, a woman came to the ferry with a young boy. It was Kamala, now older, traveling to see the Buddha before she died. A snake bit her near the riverbank, and she died in Siddhartha's arms. The boy was their son. Siddhartha, filled with a fierce new love, tried to keep the child with him, but the boy had grown up in wealth and comfort. He hated the simple life of the ferryman, rebelled against his father's quiet ways, and finally ran away. Siddhartha searched for him in anguish, then returned to the river broken by loss. In that pain, he learned the last hard lesson, that love itself must be released, that even the deepest attachment is part of the flowing river and cannot be held. Vasudeva, seeing that Siddhartha had at last understood, smiled and said that his own work was finished. He walked into the forest and was not seen again. Siddhartha remained at the ferry, his face now carrying the same calm radiance that had once marked the Buddha. Travelers who crossed with him felt a peace they could not name. One day, an aging monk came to the river. It was Govinda, still searching after all these years for the final truth. He did not recognize his old friend at first. When he learned who the ferryman was, he asked Siddhartha to share whatever wisdom he had found. Siddhartha spoke of the unity of all things, of futility of seeking in doctrines alone, and of the necessity of experience. Then, seeing that words were still not enough, he asked Govinda to kiss him on the forehead. In that moment, Govinda saw a vision. The face of Siddhartha became a flowing river of countless faces, animals, humans, gods, all forms rising and vanishing and returning, yet all of them one, all of them perfect, all of them Om. When the vision faded, Govinda knew that he had at last glimpsed the goal he had sought for a lifetime. Siddhartha continued to live by the river, ferrying travelers, listening to the water, and resting in the knowledge that everything was complete.
Darkness creeps with doubts to fight. Lonely hours test his might. Inner peace he strives to find. Strength from faith steadies his mind. While light joins his only kin, birds and deer bring songs within. Stars above